In this video, we're going to talk about rent-to-own homes, how to find rent-to-own homes this year, and how the process works. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I'm Rinde from AskRinde. Welcome. Please subscribe to the #1 community for real estate, income, grants, and credit. So if you'd like to know how to rent-to-own homes in your local area this year and how the process works, make sure you watch the video to the end and leave a comment below if you need help with anything. Rent-to-own is the process of renting a home with the option to purchase it at a later date. I call it the bridge in real estate. So normally, rent-to-own is reserved for people who actually have no credit or can't get a bank loan, an institutional loan. But now, with the market changing and uncertainty, even the rich are renting to own. And there's so many key benefits and advantages to rent to own. Number one, you don't need credit to rent to own a property. Number two, you don't need any bank. You don't need a bank loan. You don't need to go through the process of providing W-2s, pay stubs, and all the things that they actually require for you to go through in order to be able to get an institutional loan from a bank. And finally, number three, rent to own gives you time. Time to actually be in the property, see what property homeownership is all about, test the area, see what the area is all about, so you can actually decide whether or not you want to anchor your family in that location. There are many benefits to rent to own, but these three are actually primarily what I've seen over the years that I've been actually doing this process of working with people from all around the country going through the rent to own process. So this year in particular, rent to own will be key, and it's primarily for two reasons. Number one, is because it's not about whether or not you can't get a bank loan. It's because you don't want a bank loan. Currently, 30-year fix is floating around 6.48%, which means that money is more expensive, and it's more expensive to borrow, and it's more expensive to actually purchase a property. Purchasing a property is not just the interest rate. Purchasing a property includes having reserves, having closing costs. There's a lot of expenses that go into purchasing a property. And in some of my other videos that I've shared here on Rent to Own, I've talked to you about the closing costs. I've talked to you about the inspection. And depending on where you are in the country, you may need to do a tank sweep. There are other expenses that go along with purchasing a property, and you just need to be aware of the entire overall cost. And if you have a high interest rate floating above 6.4%, well, that means that your mortgage payment is going to actually be more expensive. Compounding that with inflation, your cost of living is actually going to be extremely high. And therefore, it may be a situation where you'll just have the house for a few years or months and you'll lose it to foreclosure. I always encourage our clients to make sure that they don't purchase to where they're set up to lose the property. We want people to actually be in their property for 30 years or be in it until they decide to either refinance or sell the property. We don't set them up to actually fail. Purchasing the property wrongly will actually lead you to foreclosure or lead you to fail sooner than you actually are winning with the property. And the second reason why rent to own will be key this year is that the U.S. housing market may be in trouble. So we're seeing more bank-owned properties and REOs come back on the market. There was a time with the inventory shortage that we didn't see any of those. Banks actually held back the inventory. Now we're seeing more of them come and become available through auction.com and other sources. Also, we're seeing an uptake in foreclosure. Depending on the market and the location, we're seeing more in some than others, but we're seeing more foreclosures and pending foreclosures as well as pre-foreclosures. So we're seeing properties last longer in the market and have more days on market, taking longer to sell, and less bidding wars. We're not seeing as many bidding wars on properties because there are actually less buyers that are in the market because of the interest rate. In addition to that, there's a lot of builder cancellations. Some estimates put it near 68%, whereas builders in the past have been accustomed to 10 to 20% cancellation rates, but now it's floating near 68%. And that's simply because of inflation and the overall cost and weight that's happening in the market. With the high interest rate, more buyers are actually fleeing because they know that that interest rate is actually going to make their monthly payment extremely high. The lower the interest rate, the lower your monthly mortgage and expenses will be, provided that you didn't overpay for the house. This is one of the reasons why we guided most of our clients to not purchase when the market was very, very high, because they would actually been overpaying for a house, and that can actually hurt them in the future. So with the market changing, more people will be renting as opposed to buying. And rent to own is key because it offers consolidation, because it's a house. So as opposed to family members living separately across town in apartments and paying high rent amounts, they're consolidating and moving to an entire house together and actually having less expenses, less utilities because it's a house. In addition to that, they actually have a home now. They have a driveway. They have a backyard. So it's actually an extreme valuable benefit because their children can actually go to probably a better school system because they consolidated and moved together to be able to actually have the home experience, but it's actually cheaper in their pockets by living in a house together. So rent to own, I've seen this so many times all across the country as we do this on a monthly and weekly basis, that families actually getting together and actually taking on these properties, and it's actually cheaper for them and is actually a better life for them. So how do you find rent to own homes in your area? Well, it starts with the location that you're searching for. And the first thing to consider is the type of home you want. Do you want a home with a driveway? Do you want a home with a basement? Do you want a home with a backyard? Do you want a home that's actually on an interior part of the street as opposed to a corner lot? Do you want a home that's centrally located to transportation, amenities, food, houses of worship, etc.? Do you want something that actually is easily accessible to be able to get your children to school? You need to know what type of house you want. In addition to that, you need to know also the bedroom count, the bathroom count, the type of layout that may be helpful, because you want to make sure that you look at your rent-to-own home as an opportunity to actually jumpstart you into home ownership. So if that means consolidating, you want the house to be big enough and situated so that it can actually accommodate other family or other friends that can help you support paying for the property. The second thing you want to consider is the type of properties that are available for rent to own. So it's two different things. On the one hand, you actually want the property that you have in mind that you want. On the other hand is what is available for rent to own. So those are the two things that we actually help you with in going through the process to learn the difference between what you want and what's available, and how do you actually bridge the two. How do you bring the two together? Also, in addition to location, there are many sources to be able to find rent-to-own homes, which include new development, single-family properties, as well as multi-family properties. So locating your rent-to-own property is the first step in the process, and you will not need credit and you will not need a bank loan, depending on the rent-to-own home that you're actually going after. Now, depending on your location and the rent-to-own home that you're going after, the next step in the process will be negotiation. Negotiation on terms as well as price. And then after that, you're going to be going to the next step, and probably the most important step in the entire process, and that is in a rent-to-own program, where you're actually going to be queuing yourself and preparing yourself to be able to exercise your option to purchase the property later down the line. So we show you how to find rent-to-own homes in your location, and also grants to purchase depending on your location. There are grants and free money that you do not have to pay back that you can actually use towards your rent-to-own purchase. This is actually a win-win all around for you, because you're experiencing home ownership now. You're not waiting. You're not delayed. The great thing about rent-to-own is that you can move in immediately. You don't have to wait for a long time in a process. On average, with a home purchase, it can take anywhere from 3 to 4 months to close on a deal. And depending on your circumstances, your situation, you may need to move into the rent-to-own home sooner than later, but it's actually available. The grants are great because the grants don't have to be paid back. This is actually money that you can actually use towards purchasing your rent-to-own home. In addition to that, we actually have a rent-to-own program where we actually show you the contracts, we show you the process, and a step-by-step system of how to actually go through the process of finding your rent-to-own home in your location, engaging and starting the process of negotiation, and then going through and starting a rent-to-own program so you can actually exercise your option to purchase that property. So we actually have had this rent-to-own program now for a number of years, and it's been very successful. And we teach you how to find rent-to-own homes in your location by yourself, step by step. And we also show you how to build a rent-to-own business. So what you're learning to actually do for yourself in finding rent-to-own homes in the current market, you can turn it into a business and do that business from home as a work-from-home business, or anywhere in the world you can actually do this remotely, working with rent-to-own from anywhere in the world and building a 6-figure and 7-figure business. So it's actually a dual benefit because you're learning how to do this for yourself. That means that you can actually expand this. If you're actually purchasing rent-to-own just for yourself, for your family to be able to have a home to move into, that's great. You can also turn around and actually use the same tools and the same knowledge base of how to actually develop and build a business out of it, so you can actually have more investment property and more property in your portfolio if you choose to develop a rent-to-own business. So I'd like to invite you to join our rent-to-own masterclass. This masterclass has been a game changer. It's helped many people from all around the country learn rent-to-own, get properties for themselves and their families via rent-to-own, and also develop a business via rent-to-own through this masterclass. So you can actually start this masterclass by going to my website at AskRinde.com, clicking on rent-to-own, and getting started today. I've done many properties like this all around the country and have helped hundreds of students all around the country start the process of building successful rent-to-own portfolios, and I can help you do the same. So feel free to go to my website at AskRinde.com, click on Rent to Own, and get started today, and we'll be there to help you throughout the entire process, show you actually how to go step by step in the process of finding your rent-to-own home, and also queuing you up to be able to get grants for your rent-to-own purchase at a later date. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. You can also email me. My email address is AskRindenetwork@gmail.com. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Until next time, thank you so much for watching.